Welcome everyone to day 3 of Unmasked 2025, from covert abuse to collective healing. Tonight we're going deeper into the science, the systems, and the spirit behind what so many of us have endured. My name is Sarah Martinez, founder of Divine Sisters, a two-time whistleblower, media, and IT professional. Tonight, this conversation, we're going deeper, guys. We have a great set of panelists, and I cannot wait to get started. Why don't you kick us off, Melissa? How are you? Thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you, Sarah. It's a pleasure and an honor to be a part of the panel, and acclimates to you for organizing such a wonderful event and to spreading the knowledge out that is so needed for the masses that are unaware. I myself have been targeted since 2012, and I endure quite a few of the typical targeted individual you know symptoms of the auditory response, the directed energy, bodily attacks, and the gang stalking, and all of that was in the beginning, and it just kind of evolved over time. And again, just an honor to be a part of the panel. I do host the weekly podcast called The Chosen Heroes that live streams on X, Rumble, and YouTube. And I started that after, I was very inspired and led by God to use my experience and to help others that have gone through this. And as a result, my mother was targeted from my targeting, and she passed several years ago. And I do this in honor of her memory, and so that no one else will have to see their parents or anyone they know in this world go through such a horrific violation of human rights.
Wow. Thank you so much, Melissa, and for the work that you do. I was just so inspired and grateful to have you here tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We also have Ken with us tonight. How are you, Ken?
Uh, Doing my best, doing my best. Just to give you a quick brief on who I am, my name's Ken Stroud. I'm from Arkansas. I've been fighting problems with technology-based attacks for around 6 to 7 years. And during this time, I started with a social media campaign where I reached out to anyone and everyone I possibly could to educate them about the problems that are happening in society. In the beginning, I learned about People Against Covert Torture and Surveillance International. I learned about Targeted Justice. I learned about ICATOR. I learned about all the groups by searching online because I knew the problems that I was having.
Mm-hmm.
They were not. It wasn't just my mind. So I continued not only through my research, but through medical exploratory. I went to Dr. Hopper. Dr. Hopper was unable to assist me because of with intelligence. Then I moved forward and I went to Dr. Lydia Shajenko. She diagnosed me with Havana syndrome.
Mm.
So, as Melissa was mentioning, I go through nearly all the symptoms she had mentioned. I suffer from the microwave auditory effect, also known as V2K. I
Mm-hmm.
suffer from pain attacks to the nervous system. So it's a daily battle. And my focus is to actually get out there and exercise and sweat all of this additional radio frequency that's hitting us, and
Yeah.
taking the right vitamins and doing everything we can to live healthier, because that is going to be the key focus to bringing us to the end point, to stopping these people. I'm not going to say criminals, because I don't think all of them are criminals. I think some of these people are actually part of environments that are forcing them to do these type of things. So
Mm.
we need to be open to the perspectives of what's happening in society. And as of now, I am the technical director for People Against Covert Torture and Surveillance International, and I'm on the advisory board. and I am fighting every day for each and every one of you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Kenneth. And I can't wait for us to dive deeper into a lot of what you're doing in that organization, as well as some of those things, you're doing to get healthy. Hi, Jamie. So
Hi,
excited to get to know you and all the work that you're doing. Thank you for joining us tonight.
thank you for having me. So I'm Jamie Rice. I'm the developer of a holistic science called PoliSci, the founder of the PoliSci Institute and the architect of the PoliSci Sovereign Soul Blueprint and Transformation Codex. PoliSci is an acronym for Policing Science, Thought, and Systems. We teach all things consciousness studies and biofield mechanics through protocols, formulas, and methodologies that operationalize consciousness through organic life systems. At the PoliSci Institute, we posit the soul is the ultimate truth and authority. It is the barometer and deception arbiter of all things. We offer a self-governing, active learning, defense and response model of thought, and active listening, non-dual somatic program language that operationalizes consciousness through mind, brain, heart, nervous system, free will coherence. So our mission at the PoliSci Institute is to advance human rights, particularly neural rights, cognitive sovereignty, and full autonomy by dismantling systems operating outside of truth and transparency. Along with Melissa Miller from Chosen Heroes, we offer counterterrorism and counterintelligence training through Beyond the Looking Glass. We teach the poli-sci architecture to move beyond the targeted individual into the targeted survivor.
That's awesome. I love that. I believe I follow you too. I'm really impressed and I can't wait to learn more. Thank you so much for being here. Hi, Autumn. How are you?
You for having me too. My name is Autumn Maddox, and I am a targeted individual, targeted survivor, and an advocate to many others that have had the same type of things happening to them for years. I have been targeted for many years. I first came into becoming an advocate probably, about 5 years ago. 6 years ago, I was coerced into suicide by the microwave auditory effect, using the voice of dead relatives and ex-lovers and persecution, to the point of being coerced into drinking antifreeze, and ended up floating in a pool upside down. And was targeted for financial asset stripping. Have been through it all. I've been through it all, but I've been through it for many years before that too. And in the process of this, I lost my vision. I only have 25% vision in my left eye now. I have a very difficult time swallowing. I'll send you copies of all that too, Sarah, so you can see what happened with that. But I have found myself fighting. And in the process of fighting, I meet people like I met Ken. I'll never forget when Ken reached out to me about 4 years ago, wasn't it, Ken? I think, and sent me a letter, and I was like, wow, there's other people going through this too. And it was mind blowing to me. I started connecting with people, getting involved. I got involved with John Flynn. I got involved with his case, and the fact that it was 5G technology, the apps, I went with a beautiful 11-year-old, well, he was 10 then, and a child and his mother, and went and got scanned, and they found that we all have implants in us, and that those implants have been connected to semiconductors, that I literally will get shocked from the top of my spine, the bottom of my spine. I delved into my frequency numbers using somebody that was very knowledgeable as to going into FCC. And when they did that, they found out that there was companies like AT&T that had a microwave, literal paperwork on having my frequency being used without my knowledge.
So let's go ahead and get started. My question: how can one start their healing process from experiencing trauma, an ongoing trauma, right? Again, by the very system that's causing. Anyone? Melissa, what do you think?
Well, I found that, of course, in my research, because I think that, once you get to that fork in the road of, okay, this targeting journey can really present a two-path journey of you're either going to find a way through it or you're going to perish. So, and again, I had a very, kind of that moment with God that led me to and inspired me to do a bunch of research, which is getting into the psychology of like, a stalker, a predator, a narcissist, because all of the way that this targeting journey is designed is for that, to tap into that the lower mind, which is your trauma, fear, abuse, suffering. It invokes all of that, trying to trigger the emotional responses of the fight, flight, fawn, and freeze aspect of it. So the other thing is I was also, to answer your question, doing research on, even what do, people who experience rape or molestation, what are their ways navigating out of that experience? Because with those who have experienced, rape and incest, molestation, it can be over a period of time or a one-time event. But with targeted individuals, this is a perpetual 24/7 invasion and violation of your body, your mind, and thoughts. It's so stunting in the very beginning of when this is happening to you, knowing that just no moment is free of yours. It's such a violation. Even praying, meditation, and all of this, it is a violation in a way that is beyond just the physical. It's the mental and the spiritual aspect of it. So you have to, in order to get to that, you have to get to a point where you have to say, I am ready not to carry this, to release this. You have to release it. You have to come to that moment where, okay, I cannot continue on like this, and I've got to turn inward and start to heal, because our choice is our biggest, it's our only option, and the choice should be not to self-destruct, not to be toxic in our day-to-day living. We have to nurture our temple, our body that is under constant attack, but we have to also nurture our spirit, and we have to go inward and realize who we are and not forget that, because we get wrapped up in the trauma loops and the triggers, and we forget who we were. But this experience can afford be the greatest teacher of showing us who exactly we are, to reconnect with ourselves again. And then we have to get into how these systems are designed to tear you down and to perpetuate the suffering and the grief and inspire hopelessness. So we have to really tap into, that resilience of who we are. Doing, self-care is a big thing. Breathing, coming up and trying different ways of, when you're under such severe attack, you go into your counter measures, right? And that can be, prayer, meditation, never lose that creativity spark of who you are, because that is the source of your being. So we have to make sure that we are doing things to feed our soul and to nurture our well-being, and not be wrapped up in the cyclone, kind of like the Tasmanian devil, spinning around, that cartoon, because that is what they do to distract you from day to day and rob you of life itself. We are divine sovereign beings, and we got to get back to our divine self and know that we are powerful in our creation to change the tide of what is being done against us on a day-to-day, and to succeed through persistence and developing the countermeasures to navigate back into our lives. And it is so rewarding to see how the experience itself can teach you so much about what you never thought you were capable of. And this is what I think they fear the most. It is the ultimate kryptonite to this program, is our self-healing and reclaiming our self-worth and our self-empowerment.
I love that, Melissa, and I agree. Anyone else would like to add anything?
Yes. I'd like to touch on the topic. Um, a large part of really getting through the suffering that an individual goes through, that's experiencing psychotropic, um, you know, torture, that electronic torture. We need to focus on not only um, just the specifics on what's happening to ourselves, but how we can handle that response. So, if when we look at certain perspectives, prayer, of course, for a large part of us helps out. I go to church on Sundays, and I do my best not to pray over the preacher in my mind, but a lot of times I'm praying something different than he's praying, and still trying to listen to him at the same time. Being targeted as long as I have with V2K, I've gotten to where I can listen to two conversations at once. So I'm praying while I'm listening to the preacher preach, and tears may actually run down my eyes while this is happening, because I care so much about the people. I care so much about saving myself. I care so much about everyone else that's suffering the same things that all of us have experienced, because no one truly understands what it's like besides us, besides the people that are experienced and being targeted. It's not something that should be used as a tool to move our actual country or our world forward in technology, because it is that terrible. So we need to focus on what is specific to make our individual selves handle this. So one of the things I do is exercise. I get angry, I get bothered, I get frustrated. So the first thing I go to is I go into doing everything I can to exercise to get all that anger and that frustration out, which is it's a two-prong approach, because sweating all that actual anger out also sweats out the non-radicals that are in your blood. So that is the cancer causing um, parts of what is happening in your system from the destruction of the cells from the additional radio frequency that's in your body. So remember, use that frustration, use that anger to find your center and exercise it out. Because it's not only helping your soul, it's helping your body. So there's a lot of other things we can do as well, but that's going to be very important. Um, Stay healthy, stay focused. I'm not perfect. I do things that I shouldn't. I do things I should. But I try to keep a good balance. So I think that's very important for us to stay focused. If you can bring your family into these situations, I know that's a very, very difficult task to do, because trying to talk about hearing voices, or trying to talk about having pain that you feel like is not caused from a medical condition, it's caused from an attack. And those are conversations that are not easy to have. But um, get the medical backing. Go in, get the radio frequency scans, do everything you can so you can speak on these topics. So once you have the ability to speak on these topics, you will have your family back. Not only that, you will have the ability to speak to the world.
Thank you so much, Kim. You couldn't have said it any better. I love that. Thank you so much.
I'd like to jump in for a second too. There's something that I have had the most wonderful experience with a man from Cairo, Egypt, who is a Havana syndrome therapist. His name is Dr. Amen. from I can call Dr. Amen, which I speak to him every single day, and I can have gotten hit with that horrible heartburn that we get when we feel like our heart's gonna, stop, or a horrible headache, or just an all over bad feeling. And he will literally retune my frequency from Cairo, Egypt. He is amazing. I can have a brain fog lifted off me, and he's done it for me. He's done it for so many other people, and he uses me as one of his references now. And he does not charge. There is absolutely no charge. He does this free of charge. Um, he can't give me my vision back, of course, but he has got a unbelievable way to give me an overall sense of well-being while I'm online with him. And it is one of the most amazing things in the world. And I heard Ken say, once you have the ability to explain what the voices are, what things are with your family, then you'll have your family back. That's not what my case is. But there's a lot of people that gaslighted me. There's a lot of family that I want absolutely nothing to do with. And I can explain that at a later date. But I have found a family that is not blood related that is more supportive than any family that I had in my life, except for my family that are all passed away now. And one of the closest friends that I've had in my life has been my rock here in California as well, and she is a wonderful survivor of the civil rights movement back in Birmingham, Alabama, and has given me a faith in God and prays with me daily. And I've seen Dr. Amen do the same for her. I had a friend come from the Netherlands here to see me that also was experiencing the brain fog, and I saw it happen for him. So everybody look into him as well, and it's something that he does not charge for, and he does it for humanity. He was actually up for a Nobel Peace Prize this year, and I think should be considered for it in the future as well, because he is an amazing man, and he does it all through retuning your frequency through a very healthy way. And an amazing human being, as far as I'm concerned. He does it worldwide because this is a worldwide epidemic everywhere.
Amazing. I would love to meet him. He sounds great. And the work he's doing, I mean, we can all really use it. So thank you so much, Autumn. Jamie, anything from you?
Absolutely.
Sure. So in poli-sci, we are a blend of psychology, neuroscience, systems mechanics, multidimensional physics, non-dual philosophy, and spirituality. So we're coming from the perspective of we're being controlled through our trauma and through our central nervous system, through polarity, basically mind control programming. So if we can organize the mind and categorize things, we can start responding to attacks properly. But really, we come from the perspective of inner child healing and shadow integration, because that's how we're being controlled through. You have to realize the mind is a program. It was programmed in inner child timelines through society, religious, and cultural perspectives. So our mind isn't even ours. It kind of belongs to the system if you think about it. So if we can take control of the thoughts, the belief systems, and organize the mind, we can see our way through the trauma healing. And that's what we do ultimately, is teach people how to connect the mind, the brain, the heart, the nervous system, and free will into a coherent system. And that's what we do, is we break everything down to a system. And when you understand how the system functions, you can better understand how to kind of maneuver through it. And we learn these things as we go. You don't have to understand quantum mechanics. You don't have to understand physics to know this. You learn this because it's who you are. The soul teaches all of it to you. All we have to do is organize the mind, set up a plan, have intentions, and work through the plan. It's very difficult healing trauma. It happens slowly over time. It's a process, and that's what we do. We work with the fight, flight, fawn, freeze survival responses to teach you how to become self-aware, present, build spatial recognition, understand what headspace you're in, and how to maneuver through, because really ultimately we're teaching you how to discern energies, because that's how the system functions, is through energy. It's an energy mapping system. And when you can map energies in your own system, for example, I feel something, What is it that I'm feeling? Oh, I feel fear kind of coming up. Then you just stop, you ask questions, you get centered, and you move from a clear mindset versus the mind becomes very chaotic when you start to be, when you're being attacked. It'll start racing, it'll start thinking in layers. So, for example, the conscious mind thinks in past and future thinking patterns. The subconscious mind is sort of stuck between waking and visionary states. And the unconscious mind is toggling back and forth between the default mode network and the executive function. So if we can organize our mind and understand, where are we? What am I thinking right now? I'm thinking in the past. I'm thinking in the future, because the past is going to bring up anger, resentment, blame. The future is going to send you into anxiety. So it's really about organizing, understanding how to process and discern energies properly, and then taking the proper actions.
That's amazing, Jamie. I want to learn more. So I have so many questions. I might be one of your clients next. No, but really, Jamie, so how exactly do you guys get to unraveling the trauma? Is it similar to like cognitive behavioral therapy? Like,
We
what are
do
the
all of it.
ways?
So are you asking how we do it with poli-sci, with the
Poli sci.
TIs?
Yeah. Poli sci.
Okay, so just what I explained is becoming present, building a plan, sticking to the plan, becoming intentional, basically thinking about your thinking. Thinking about your processes. Where is my mind right now? Am I thinking in the past or the future? Because the reality is, the only real reality is the present moment. That's it. Everything else is the illusion. But we've been conditioned to think in past and future because the mind's chaotic. It was programmed inside of duality and polarity. It's a false construct. So everything you think, believe, say, do has an imprint, a shadow imprint. So you're always going to be toggling between positive and negative. We are all consist of positive and negative energies. So it's really about understanding, is this coming from me? Where is this coming from? Who was I just speaking to? Why am I upset? It's really about taking a mental inventory of your life. Where are your drains? Where are you wasting your energy? Where are you putting your time? Who are you placing your energy on? Are you feeding into systems that are wasting your time? It's really about taking self-accountability is what we do. We teach you how to become self-governing, active learning, defending, and responding to data and information. And we break it down to energy because that's what it is. But we were never taught how to speak the language of energy. We are all coming from different frameworks. We can't even agree on what the problem is, let alone how to fix it. But one thing for sure, you will never find a solution inside of polarity, because with polarity, all views. So if I have a perspective, you have a perspective, Melissa and everyone else, that's your truth. So how can there be that many perspectives? That it doesn't work that way. So it's really about finding the polarity. Where are the distortions? Where am I being manipulated? Am I giving up my energy? So really all this boils down to consent, what we are consenting to. So we know what the problem is. We know how to fix it. We just have to do the work now. We're being controlled by dirty frequencies. And our subconscious and unconscious mind, you're only working with maybe 10% of your conscious mind during the day. You're pretty much functioning from the default mode network. So that means you're unconscious. So it's about bringing all of your unconscious responses up to the conscious mind for review so you can move forward and start healing trauma. And we basically heal trauma through the fight, flight, fawn, freeze, survival responses, because we basically start mapping patterns and finding the distortions, because a lot of the distortions come from us through our belief systems. If you have any distortions, low self-worth, low self-esteem, that's going to come through these attacks. So, if you're being attacked and you don't stop, breathe, take a moment, collect yourself, then your mind's going to spiral. You're going to go into a response, and it could take 2-3 days up to a week to kind of balance out, depending on how bad it is. So
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you so much, Jamie. So, yes, healing is extremely important and it's necessary. What is healing when there's no accountability? What does that look like in regards to justice? What if we don't get our justice?
well, through this process, we learn higher consciousness perspectives and you learn how systems work through energy. So, for example, I use the analogy you're standing in a house of mirrors. Each mirror is a reflection of your targeting experience. Example, anger, resentment, frustration, shame, guilt. So, basically, if the mirror is reflecting something to you, you have the ability to turn inward. And what that does is returns darkness for darkness because you start sending out signals. This is about signaling. What signal am I sending out? So you're sending out a signal of I'm self-governing. I'm taking self-accountability. So that flips and that sends the energy back to the sender times 10. And it's really interesting how this happens, but it takes a minute to build the framework to understand what I'm talking about. But this is how we dismantle systems. And this is what you're seeing occurring. It's because nobody is backing down. People are speaking up and they're turning the mirror. You know, they're doing the work. They're taking self-accountability. Is this coming from me? Is this coming from there? Because the reality is you can override these attacks. When I'm being attacked, it's outside of me now. I'm still having the experience, but it's outside of me. And I'm hyper focused and hyper aware. I know every thought in my mind, every belief that I have. So as soon as I feel an energy, I stop immediately. What is this? I police my biofield. You know, I don't let anyone in, but your defense is taking self accountability. And that's what we're doing. So we just have to kind of shift the perception a little bit. I tell people all the time the solution that I'm going to give you, I may as well be saying to you, take off all your clothes, run backwards 1 mile every single day, and you will not be a target after 2 months. That's pretty much, it sounds ridiculous, right? And what I'm offering sounds ridiculous. It sounds too simple, but it's not.
I think the number one thing that this program needs is our buy-in and
Yeah.
the belief that there's, tapping into that shame and all of the insecurities that we have and gaslighting them, right? It just, making us be, hyper vigilant, always, on the lookout for what's going to happen next, that whole thing. And that's where we can really lose and disconnect from ourselves. And then what I found very therapeutic is, we all have those traits and those parts of who we are that are what we feel undesirable and that we reject. And, Carl Jung and the shadow work, if you followed any of his, philosophies about shadow work and stuff, to me, I think is a very important. And that's what poli sci does. We're tapping into those shadow aspects, those rejected parts of ourselves. And we are healing those beliefs that are tied behind that rejection of ourselves and those aspects of ourselves to become whole and integrated. And that's what really builds up this resilience and the shield, against these programs. Yes, they're using these sophisticated, biological, interfering directed energy weapons against us. But that's where we have to go into system override. We have to start, not giving in into that suffering and go into our counter defenses, whether that be shielding, grounding, walking, exercise, creative ways of releasing uh, the experience of the torture that we go through on a day-to-day basis, and just not succumb to it. Because once we give in, I call it like that handshake with it, especially with those with the auditory effect. you give your hand and extend that, then you're in a dance like the death roll of an alligator. It's best to, breathe, center yourself, and non-response with it, because then they try other things, right? But then they get to the point where they realize, well, nothing's working anymore. So I think that's where, they do the combination of the directed energy, but then you just have to treat it the same and go into your counter defenses. I mean, we have to be creative in this, because not one person's way of maneuvering through the targeted journey is going to be the same as another. So we have to be experimenters and explorers with this.
I agree. I agree 100%. We need to combine not only the psychological view on this, but we also need to put in the technological. So, looking at this, as how to handle the perspective is very important, because not only are we trying to solve a political problem in our nation, in our world, but we're also trying to solve a problem that involves technology. So we have to focus on both. So those of us that are affected, of course, that we have to keep ourselves together. Um, but we also are the ones that know what is happening. We understand these experiences, and we're the ones that are going to have to share it to the rest of the world on how bad it is and why it shouldn't happen to other people. Along with that, we need to show the world how to protect themselves. So, shielding, we had mentioned that before, plenty of times, but also there's a lot of focus that we need to see on uh, reading spectrum analyzers, knowing where you should be in your home and where you should not be in your home, things you can do to help your home, your wherever you're at, wherever it be at the revenue office, whether it be at in your vehicle while you're driving to church, or it's at your house. No matter where you're at, you need to understand what is happening in that location. So, being able to just look at the basics of a spectrum analyzer is going to help you out. I'm happy to go over those details with everyone as well, but I'll hold that for the next topic.
Can I mention something else?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so when we break it down, we see that we are basically controlled psychologically, neurologically, biologically, chemically, magnetically, and electrically. So whomever or whatever controls the mind controls the body. It's being controlled through the central nervous system. So if you heal the trauma, you take their ability to do that to you.
Right.
And that's really our message here with Poli-Sci is heal the trauma. And that requires shadow work and inner child healing. But the reality is the inner child has all the keys to blow the roof off this system. And really, that's what they don't want us to do, is go back and heal the inner child. Because the inner child, when you go through this process, you end up getting pretty much your full memory back. And you become untouchable. We talk about quarantine timelines and immunity structures. Non-duality places us inside those structures. The soul will protect you. Does that mean that you're not going to still experience adversity? No, that's not all. But it means you're protected. You are divinely guided. The soul is the ultimate authority here. We just have to get our mind straight, because we are under mind. Duality is mind control and polarity is manipulation. So when we put things in perspective, we can really see, and that's, again, becoming self-governing. Once you're self-governing, you can claim your agency, and you are a force to be reckoned with. They can't do anything to you when you heal your trauma. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I know, because I've been through this for 21 years, and I know where I started and where I've ended up, and it works. But people shy away from healing. They hear inner child healing and they want to run. But it's the antidote for this. It is. And we just need to get more people on board so they can start feeling the effects of it, because it's astonishing. It's nothing short of a phenomenon, is the only way I would describe it.
When we start to heal ourselves, we're actually healing the collective, consciousness, and also we're also healing our ancestors when we do that work. This is, some of this is generational that passes down to us. It's societal, and then it's the interfering, you know, system hijacking, from the targeting too. You have all of these variables, and then it's really important to get to the essence, the soul of who you are. And as Jamie said, it really is your shield, your higher self, your higher mind. That connection to the divine is where the healing, it flows.
Yes, and I completely agree. Jamie, I'd love for us to talk about how Divine Sisters and Poli Sci can collaborate. I will be so interested in seeing more TIs really utilize that, what Poli Sci offers, and I'm sure with that alone, more and more TIs would want to use it.
Yeah. Well, everything we offer is free, so we don't profit from any of this. And I'm not selling anything. I have no vested interest. Well, I do have a vested interest, but I'm trained through non-attachment, non-judgment, non-expectation. I just sort of, go with the flow and allow my soul to reveal what needs to be done next. And yeah, I'm game for anything to spread awareness and to get people, because ultimately this process is how you claim your neurocognitive rights.
Yes.
Because the reality is, when you step inside of fight, flight, fawn, and freeze, you're in the system. You're in past and future thinking. You're not even in reality. But it's difficult. It's nothing. This is like brain surgery, this process. It has to be done slowly over time. And we work through a template that we created, which is present moment self-awareness, emotional honesty, self-accountability, self-acceptance, tolerance, empathy, self-compassion, forgiveness, gratitude, and courage. So we bring in all of those elements and teach you, because that's the soul. That's the soul in action, with all of those elements being present. And coherence is the signal that keeps you in the safety zone. So, for example, you may get some really bad news. You think it's the end of the world. You want to give up. But if you think it through and process it through coherence, it's basically a problem-solving formula. And you step outside of time, because time isn't even real. It's a man-made construct. So we're talking about accessing other systems, organic life systems, where the soul is, where your higher self is located outside of time. So we're literally coherence, broadcasting signals of coherence, which then in turn sends a return signal back to you with solutions and new directions. And it really opens up the mind to be able to see clearly. But when you're inside of polarity, stuck in anger, resentment, fear, shame, guilt, sadness, that's the program. That's how we're being controlled. And you say, and rightfully so, our feelings are valid. But the thing is, we can process out our emotions, because that's what trauma is. It is stuck emotions in the biofield that has to be released. So when we start releasing and healing, we just stick to one protocol. Literally, we have one formula to work for everything. It doesn't matter if you're in a relationship, some type of life event that shook your world, the targeting experience. I mean, it's all processed through one formula. Does it take time to build that understanding? Absolutely. But it happens every day. Every single day you show up and you do the work. Really, it's about building present moment self-awareness, policing the mind. What am I thinking? How do I feel right now? What's the emotion behind this thought or idea that I'm thinking about? Just really honing in, becoming conscious. Consciousness can be operationalized through this process. And that's really ultimately what we're doing. And we figured out a big secret. Basically, we know how consciousness functions in time multidimensionally through a physics engine. So really, we just have to hone in and really understand, what does that mean? And we learn what it means through healing. It's healing and deprogramming. And that's what we do. It's an algorithm that we offer and you just work that algorithm, and the soul guides you, because we organize spiritually at the soul level, and you become untouchable.
I love that.
Yes, essentially it's undoing this brainwashing,
Yeah.
the lies and deceptions and distortions, and people, targeted individuals have to really come to terms with, you've got to chase your inner healing like it's the absolute most important thing in your life. We're, those that may be just waiting, for, an event or an action to unplug this. You have to understand, even if it ended tomorrow, you still have to emotionally process the trauma from the experience, because trauma within the body, and it stores itself, it has, its memory, it's in the body, it has to be released, because you have to look at it as, okay, I'm going to take my healing in my own hands today and going forward, while I still spread awareness. But that inner healing, it is mandatory. Even if it ended, tomorrow, you still have to heal from this experience. It's trauma. It is trauma. And to really live, you have to heal.
Yeah, trauma stored in the cells, the fascia. It's well, dealing with the voice to skull, basically you're dealing with rumination and trauma loops. They are replaying. So one of the things for me, you're going to be lucky, you're going to die broke and homeless. You'll be lucky to have a car to sleep in. So I mean, I heard that for 2 years at the broke of my brokenness. And I mean, the fear that it would cause. And I just sat down, did the work, I released it. And I mean, they still try. Basically, everything drops off. When you start taking accountability for your healing, you might have to go in and heal one thing 5, maybe 10 times, depending on the level of emotion that's attached to it. But once you do that, it drops off like an addiction. It just does. It's truly remarkable, but it's hard work. But
That
you have to become sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yes.
that is a constant between most of us that are experiencing the microwave auditory effect, B2K. They're going to bash us with worry, with concern, with the problems that we're experiencing. So we have to stand above those, and I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, well, they're bashing us with the unconscious beliefs and ideas that we have about ourselves. So when we bring all of those things up to the surface, we can see them for what they are. They're basically programs. These technologies work through shadow programs. So they got you. When you step into anger, frustration, guilt, shame, that's how they get you. Contempt. I've mapped out many times what stress does and unprocessed emotions. It's a myriad of effects. Basically, it just starts controlling your nervous system. And the thoughts that you continue to think over and over eventually become wired in as beliefs. So they're pathways. And unless you do something to mitigate it, you're going to keep traveling down the same pathways. You have to open up the mind, start dissecting, looking at it from different ways. How can I see this differently? What am I not seeing? What am I most afraid of? What am I afraid of losing? Am I allowing myself to be manipulated to avoid a painful truth? These are all questions. And when you start opening up to that dialogue, the soul will start giving you answers. The mind will start opening up to higher perspectives, things you never even thought of. But it's because you sat down and took accountability. That's what this is about. When you take self-accountability and you become honest and dialogue with yourself, like, for example, I don't negate that something is terrible. I say, well, it appears that I'm being attacked right now. This sucks. I feel it in my gut. I feel it in my chest. I feel ping in my shin. And then I just sit there and work with it. I start breathing and I start moving the energy through me. And then I start dialogue. What is this connected to? I mean, it could very well, it was a conversation I was having with someone 10 minutes ago because I haven't set boundaries. but our boundaries become our shield and our protection, what we're consenting to versus not. And really, it's about energy. Where are you placing your time and attention is where you're placing your energy. So if you're feeding into nonsensical BS, that's what you're going to get back, because it's like you're interfacing with your nervous system, but your DNA is also a processing system. So everything is stored in the DNA. So you have the ability to tap in and access more and more information of who you are. We are divine beings. We don't have to do this with them, but we have to unplug, again, psychologically, neurologically, biologically, chemically, magnetically, electrically, and chemically. And it's really organizing the mind. These thoughts have chemical reactions that flood the body. These attacks, you get the drift.
Jamie and I do, we co-host through the Beyond the Looking Glass, a free teleconference. Typically it's bi-weekly, but you can go visit the Chosen Heroes Twitter X page for the schedule, and take, sign up and participate. Every time that we meet, we usually have a exercise along with an accompanying hand guide that is distributed to those who attend and have signed up.
I found out that I was being targeted, started spiritually waking up in 2019. And it's, I was abusing substances. I was abusing Adderall, weed, and just drinking a lot, working as a bartender. And COVID is what I believe woke a lot of people up. And I have always wanted to move forward in law enforcement. But I, stupidly dedicated the years of my 20s to just living life on my terms. And then and I've always been very vocal about this to the people that were around me, and just turning my life around. And I wanted to move forward in law enforcement, got a job working security. It was third shift. And I wasn't awakened to how badly I was infected with parasites at the time, right? And I started to notice people following me. And at that time, before I got hired in 2020, but I did date a cop that was on admin leave. So I didn't realize at the time that he was a handler, right? So he was actually being compensated to drug me. And it wasn't until I got the security job where I noticed people, it was at a college, and I noticed professors and students looking at me weird. And it was also the time where police, like F the police was a very popular phrase for a lot of people, just given the brutality against the community. And so I wasn't awakened to me personally being sabotaged. And then I started to flash back to how, I didn't know why my ex was on admin leave as a police officer. Come to find out, I had to have an interview with the state police. He was fired for stalking behavior. He had dated a coworker, right? So I feel like this is where karma bit the organized crime just plan to begin with, because the handler that they picked for me was actually a stalker. He did end up getting fired for stalking behavior. This was out of Portland, Maine. And it was it was me waking up to being continuously drugged and essayed while being with him. And I think that he was videotaping me and putting it online on profiles that were catfishing me. And I started to put that together years down the road when people would come up to me in public and say weird things that weren't making any sense. And then it was the more spiritually awakened I became, right? Going out in nature, I was naturally cleansing for parasites. It was like my higher self was guiding me to certain things, right? Turmeric on a regular basis, which does help with your third eye. Um, and it wasn't until, like I found out that he was a stalker. My family insisted that I moved home to Connecticut. And then that's where the sabotage just got way worse. As a comedian, I was, waitressing, working security, and doing stand up, trying to make all of that work. And it was just too much, working 85 hours a week while also actively, abusing substances, getting on stage. It was like the universe really sat me down, and I had gotten a DUI. So I got fired from my security job. And it just, again, like, I want to preface how people and coworkers started treating me, and I wasn't waking up because of my substance abuse, right? I wasn't waking up to fully how badly I was being slandered. It was like, for me, I kind of thought, like, I'm like, okay, people are seeing that I'm abusing substances. But then again, people would make comments that weren't adding up. And it just, the way that everything happened as it should. So, once I had moved home and I still had to find a job, right? So I was still doing stand up in Connecticut, and I was unemployed at the time. So I was going for runs every day. That's when I noticed the patterns of the same cars following me, like, back and forth, making themselves known to me while I'm running, either beeping. A lot of people would flip me off. A lot of people with New York plates. This was in Stafford Springs, Connecticut. So a lot of people would drive by really slow, right? A gang stalker thing is they roll their window down. They're trying to make you uncomfortable because, again, this is also a spiritual warfare. So it's like the demons in these people. And I always tell people, you have to differentiate being targeted in the 3D. Are people around you earning compensation, or is their vibration so low that their vessel is actually susceptible for lower vibrational entities to work through them? Because this is what's very real, is we're being targeted in the 3D and in the 5D, right? This is like the devil just straight up using people. So I would notice people would pull up as I would run by, and they would say things, or, just basically try to come off weird. And that was the first time an alert went off in my brain. It felt like I was being trafficked. I also put on a movie that was on Amazon Prime. I can't remember what it was called, but I remember telling my sister, I randomly just said this. I was like, I feel like I've been put on earth to stop human trafficking. I've never said anything like that before. And the look on her face was really perplexing, because it's when I started to wake up to my sister also being a handler. My sister was earning compensation to put things in my food and drink, right? To continue what my ex was doing with the fake profiles. Her husband and her, like, her husband is also a Freemason. My ex was a Freemason. I remember being with them, and they would use Mason codes. And I knew that something was weird, but I didn't know at the time what it was, right? So basically, that's where this is organized crime. Multiple streams of income were stemming from me, unbeknownst to me, drugging me, sexually assaulting me, putting it out into the universe to then not only earn compensation, but it's to show people in positions of power and take finances that were coming to me, like inheritances from my papa, basically saying proof to say this person's inadequate to receive these funds. This is actually what they're doing online, and none of it's true. Literally, none of that's true. So then it just got worse and worse as the years went on, being completely sabotaged at a waitressing job. This was at Wooden Tap in Enfield, Connecticut. I got tricked into moving in with a roommate, because a lot, for targeted people, they'll say that you're a drug addict, a prostitute, a pedophile. They want to inform the community that you are everything but your name, the most disgusting, vile things that they can think of, to make people want to rally against you. They want to boost these people up and make them feel like they're really a part of Neighborhood Watch. So they're not only being compensated, but a lot of them really think that they're assisting in a positive way. And in reality, they're helping corrupt law enforcement. They are acting as domestic terrorists in other people's lives to earn, like, basically. And I also think they're earning money that was taken from you, because the government is taking our money, right? My boyfriend had informed me, like, when you're born, you'll notice that on your birth certificate, it's all caps. That entity of your name is all caps, but when you go to write your name, he's like, you're spelling it with a capital and then all lowercase. Those are two different entities, and that's how the government is getting away with our funds.